The movie begins with Willy Wonka, who is the main character, on a sea voyage, reaching a new city through a ship. Excited to start a new life, Wonka enthusiastically descends from the ship and explores the city, enjoying himself. As he roams through the city's market with various shops, he notices a closed shop, feeling a connection as if it's meant for him. In his imagination, he envisions people dancing, singing, and celebrating with him, but in reality, Wonka is the only one dancing there. The scene shifts, and we see that it's nighttime. Wonka is wandering alone on the city streets. Wonka sits on a public bench, where he had laid down to sleep. Suddenly, a guy named Bleacher approaches Wonka and tells him that he has a house nearby. He mentions that he and his wife rent out rooms. Wonka picks up his belongings, and together with Bleacher, they head towards Bleacher's house. Finally, Wonka and Bleacher arrive at Bleacher's home. So there, we find Bleacher's wife, scrubbed, and before Wonka can get the room, he has to sign an agreement. Bleacher and his wife make it a rule. As Wonka is about to sign the agreement, a little black girl named Noodle, who happens to be Scrubbed and Bleacher's daughter, signals to him not to sign. Wonka doesn't understand Noodle's message, but he starts to suspect. Opening the agreement, Wonka finds it unusually long. Feeling compelled, Wonka reluctantly signs the agreement. Finally, Wonka gets his room. After this, we see that the screw-bit Noodle punishes because the Noodle gave a signal. Noodle locks the screw-bit Noodle in a room where it was very dark. The next morning, Wonka goes to the same market again and introduces himself to the people. Wonka tells the people, "My name is Willy Wonka, and I am a magician. I make very good chocolates, and there is magic in my chocolates too." Wonka takes off his hat, and from inside his hat, a jar full of chocolates appears. Wonka opens the jar, and all the chocolates inside the jar fly into the air. Then Wonka makes a gesture, and all the flying chocolates return to the jar in the same place. People are highly entertained watching Wonka's performance. That's when our villains, Porna's Fickle Grubber and Slogworth Inn, who own chocolate factories in the entire area, decide to test Wonka's chocolates. They realize that Wonka's chocolates are incredibly tasty. However, they lie to Wonka, saying his chocolates are terrible. Suddenly, the Slugworth balloon flies away, and behind it, Porna's Fickle Grubber is also flying in the air. After this, Wonka opens the jar of his chocolates, and all the chocolates fly into the air. The people standing there eat those chocolates, and everyone starts flying in the air. Then Wonka tells everyone that the effect will last only for a while. Everyone loves Wonka's chocolates. After this, Wonka returns to his room, where Scrab demands rent from him. We see that Wonka has run out of money, so those who don't pay rent, like Bleacher and Scrabbed, are made to work. Wonka throws bleach at them, and passing through a pipe, Wonka falls into a basement where he meets some characters, including Abacus Crunch, Piper Ben's Lutie Bell, and a comedian Larry. In the basement, there was a laundry shop where clothes were being washed. Since these characters also hadn't paid rent, they end up working there. So with all these activities, there's good bonding with Wonka, and all these people teach Wonka how to wash clothes. Wonka spends the entire day washing clothes with them, and at night, they send him to their rooms. Wonka stands in his room when suddenly, noodles are served in all the rooms. Wonka's food is brought to his room, and after that, when Wonka opens his bag, we see a small setup inside where Wonka used to make his chocolates. Then Wonka makes a chocolate there and gives it to the chocolate noodle, which she likes a lot. In the next scene, we see the chief of police entering a church where he meets a priest named Julius. The chief of police gives the priest a chocolate, and after consuming it, the priest gears up with a mysterious sign. Subsequently, the chief of police descends into the ground with his chair, revealing a secret setup. Here, we discover a secret chocolate factory belonging to Prodnon Fickle Gaber and Slagvers. All three chiefs of police receive a considerable bribe in the form of chocolates and instruct them to stop Willy Wonka from making chocolate. The next morning, a bleach whistle blows, and Wonka and others exit their rooms to head back to the laundry. To wash clothes, Wonka applies bleach in his conversation. He freely advises on how to present oneself with one's wife. After that, we see Wonka creating a whole setup with his mind and magic, where the dog behind eating bleach was a part, and everything was happening on its own due to the dog running away, like clothes washing and pressing themselves. So, there's no need for anyone to wash or dry clothes anymore. The bleach doesn't seem to notice all of this because Wonka, following his advice, is attempting to please his wife. After that, in a small lift where clothes were going in and out, Wonka, hiding in the clothes, emerges through the lift. Then, Noodle and Wonka reach a zoo together. In the zoo, Noodle and Wonka enter a cage and reach a female giraffe. Noodle sings in front of the giraffe, entertaining it. After that, Wonka goes behind and extracts milk from the female giraffe to use in making chocolates. Just then, Noodle tells Wonka that Bleacher and Slobe are not my real mom and dad. I found them somewhere. I have never seen my real mom and dad. After that, Wonka tries to make Noodle happy by dancing and singing. In the middle of the night, they are dancing in a juice bar, and the police catch them. Chief of Police approaches Wonka and dips his face in cold water, warning him not to make or sell chocolate again. Later, Wonka returns to the laundry shop and shares his problem with others. Abacus Crunch tells Wonka that he used to work for Pro-Nose Fickelgruber and Slag, revealing a secret chocolate factory map and plan he saw in a book at Slackworth's office. Abacus Crunch explains the map and plan to Wonka. So finally, Wonka learns the location of Pro-Nose Fickelgruber and Slag's secret chocolate factory. The next morning, we see Wonka, Abacus Piper, Ludi Larry, and Noodle, all hiding like spies, selling chocolates in different places. Whenever Wonka realizes the police are coming, he escapes through a gutter. Wonka and his team, including Noodle, make a substantial amount of money. Later, the scene shifts to the night, where Wonka is sleeping in his room. Suddenly, a person enters Wonka's room through the window, the chocolate thief, who was about to steal chocolates. However, he steps on something, triggering a chain of events that leads him to fall into a massive jar through a pipe. After that, Wonka gets up from his bed and sees the chocolate thief trapped inside a jar. He notices that the small, red-skinned person with green hair introduces himself as Oompa Loompa. Through the conversation between Oompa Loompa and Wonka, we learn about Oompa Loompa's backstory. A long time ago, Wonka went to a jungle where he gathered some magical fruits on a mound. Oompa Loompa, however, picked those fruits and left. When Oompa Loompa's family discovered the stolen fruits and saw him sleeping, they kicked him out. Oompa Loompa blames Wonka for being homeless and stealing chocolates as a consequence. After that, Oompa Loompa tells Wonka to set him free, promising not to reveal anything and not to go anywhere. Wonka trusts Oompa Loompa and releases him. Later, Oompa Loompa takes the chocolates and escapes. The next morning, we see that it was finally the day when Wonka and his team earned so much money that Wonka could rent his favorite shop. Wonka, along with his team, Abacus Piper, Ludi Larry, and Noodle, collaborates to decorate the junkyard shop and start making their chocolates. Afterward, Slagworth and his two partners, the three chief of police, call for a meeting and instruct them to find a way to shut down Wonka's shop by any means necessary. The chief of police tells them that Wonka has legally opened his shop, so they can't force it to close. Finally, Wonka opens his shop, and everyone enters. Inside, Wonka and his team have transformed the shop into a jungle with trees, plants, flowers, animals, clouds, and rain, everything made of chocolate. On the first day itself, Wonka and his team's chocolates sell exceptionally well, and people love them. However, a problem arises when everyone experiences a side effect from the chocolate. Their hair grows rapidly and becomes colorful. Behind all this is Slagworth, who had added something to Wonka's chocolates. People's anger grows, and they start destroying everything in Wonka's shop. Wonka's heart breaks, and he starts crying. After that, we are shown a flashback scene where we see that Wonka's mom used to make delicious chocolates, and Wonka learned chocolate making from her. In his childhood, Wonka promised his mom that when he grows up, he will become the best chocolate maker, and people will love his chocolates. That's why people enter the shop. Pro-Nose Fickelgruber and Slagworth, the three of them, tempt Wonka with money, asking him to make chocolates for them. However, Wonka rejects their offer. Then, they tell Wonka to leave the town. Heartbroken, Wonka picks up his bag and reaches the harbor, where Slagworth had prepared a sea-ready ship. Wonka boards the ship and sails away. On the ship, he encounters Pro-Nose Fickelgruber, Slagworth, and the chief of police, bidding farewell to Wonka. Wonka sets sail on the sea. And as Wonka sits in the ship lost in thought, Oompa Loompa approaches him. Here, we see that Oompa Loompa was also sailing with Wonka. Through their conversation, Wonka realizes that maybe Slagworth had mixed something in his chocolate. The anxious Wonka rushes to the captain, but to his surprise, the captain is not there, and there's a bomb instead. The bomb explodes, causing the entire sea-ready ship to blast in the ocean. After this, there is a direct scene shift to Wonka's team, where they had ventured into the chocolate business with Wonka. Now, with a considerable amount of money, they pay Scrubbed and her husband Bleacher for their rent. Abacus Piper, Ludi Larry, Noodle, and the rest are now free. Following this, we see that Screwbit and Bleacher once again imprison Noodle in the same dark room. Then, Wonka and his team arrive, freeing Noodle from that room. In the next scene, Wonka and his team steal the female giraffe from the zoo and leave her in the chapel under which the chocolate factory is located. The giraffe starts running around in the chapel, bringing a new energy to the place. Julius Pattery calls the emergency team, and we see that Larry had answered the phone, who is part of Wonka's team. After this, Abacus and Larry form an emergency team to capture the giraffe. In their truck, hidden was Wonka and Noodle. Abacus and Larry manage to catch the giraffe, but through their route, Noodle and Wonka reach the basement factory. There, they find a diary revealing all the wrongdoings committed by Pronos Fickelgruber and Slagworth. At that moment, Pronos Fickelgruber and Slagworth enter, facing Wonka and Noodle. So, Slagworth tells Noodle that she is his daughter. He explains that he had an affair with another woman, and that woman's daughter used to be brought to him every day, claiming to be his daughter. One day, frustrated, he stole the little girl and left her in front of someone else's house. Noodle realizes that Slagworth is her real father, not Wonka. After this revelation, Slagworth and his two partners, the three Panthers, point guns at Wonka and Noodle, locking them in the room where the chocolate is mixed. They pour chocolate from above, leaving them trapped. So, as the room was filling with chocolate, Wonka and Noodle were submerged in it. Pronos Fickelgruber and Slagworth leave, laughing, and finally, Wonka and Noodle are completely immersed in the chocolate. Afterward, an entry is made where Oompa Loompa, Wonka's friend, takes action. He clicks a button to stop the chocolate's pressure, and finally, Wonka and Noodle catch their breath. They come out of the room where, in front of the church, Pronos Fickelgruber and Slagworth were already standing with Chief of Police Wonka. Wonka hands over the book with all the evidence to Officer Ed Bell. After that, Officer Ed Bell, Chief of Police, Professor Nos Fickelgruber, arrests Slagworth, and from the water fountain that followed, chocolate from their factory starts pouring out. This was part of Wonka's plan, and everyone enjoys drinking the chocolate. Finally, Wonka's dream comes true, and he introduces his Noodle to his mom. There, Noodle finally sees his mom, and Oompa Loompa introduces her to Wonka, who presents a jar filled with chocolates from his head. Wonka then places it in Oompa Loompa's hand, and they, along with Noodle, visit a new place where Wonka will open his new chocolate shop. With this movie concludes. I hope you have liked this movie recap. Please like, share and subscribe for real recaps.